I intended to invite you at the end of the 2-3 days of meetings which we've had here. Most of you are familiar with the way it goes here, both for the spring and in autumn. So, together with those meetings of the fund and the bank, we've also had interactions and bilateral meetings. There will be a complete exhaustive press brief or release which is being shared with you all, which will get into details of each one of the meetings and each one of the bilaterals and the outcomes. So before we left from here, I thought it's one good occasion for me to invite you once again, just to give a broad picture of what has happened here. So with that opening statement, I'll leave it to you.
Could you give us a sense of your main takeaways from your meetings, both bilateral and the ones at the World Bank group meetings?
Yeah, the World Bank and the fund meetings, I think the discussions overall were looking at what was causing the global slowdown. It was very apparent that the long low, as they call it, is the worry in most people's minds about how interest rates are continuing to be low for too long, and the question of whether it will continue like that. Also the question of in a way investment not really happening as much as it should. Economy is wondering how long this cycle will continue, although the overall tone and tenor was hopefully not for very long. There were of course voices from different continents of countries which felt that the problem was not uniform. In many countries, like I'll quote the example of Minister from Nigeria, who said interest rates have been not at all low in our country and investment returns were high, in fact attractive enough. And therefore, with such voices, and India also taking this position that different geographies require different solutions, and also called for a concerted action to be taken by the fund and the bank, and that there should be a clear understanding of how differences existed between countries, between geographies, of actual impact of the slowdown and so on. So it actually gave us an opportunity to understand the different perspectives, whilst there was a common agreement that one size fits all solution cannot work in this case. So both the fund and the bank, I was happy to know that they are speaking very clearly that different approaches probably may have to be designed. The call was for that, and the fund and the bank were receptive to such a call. That's about the bank and the fund. And bilaterals were with different countries, each one of course pursuing different issues which were typical of them. It was only a pull aside with the US Treasury Secretary, and it was more in the context of his likely visit sooner, wherein I expect to have a lot more detailed discussions with him. The rest was with Russia, with Maldives, with Kyrgyzstan, with Korea.
Ma'am, in your speech to the IMFC, you have said that there needs to be integration of anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing when IMF grants loans to other countries. And a few months ago, IMF gave around 6 billion worth of loans to Pakistan. Do you think this aspect IMF ignored while giving loans to Pakistan?
I didn't get into the details of what considerations were before them when they extended the facility to Pakistan. But I certainly did mention that it has to have a certain linkage. Otherwise, if there is a global action towards controlling terror and money laundering, it won't serve the purpose.
And on the trade front, with the US, anything that you could update, in this visit, and what can be expected in India, and how soon is that? What's the timeline like?
In fact, I broadly mentioned it to Secretary Munchin, but that is something on which the Commerce Minister and Mr. Lighthizer are working, I think. And my inputs are that the negotiations are going in full speed, and there is a great intensity with which both the sides are engaging, and hopefully the deal will be struck soon.
Soon, and any timeline, ma'am?
Ma'am, there have been certain comments that were made not only by the chief economist of the IMF as well as the MD with respect to India-specific reforms that need to be done, especially with respect to the financial sector. Now, the government has announced a few measures to take care of the NBFC stress, but anything more that can be done from the government side?
Well, at this stage, I haven't anything to announce, but a lot of work is going on in the context of pre-budget preparations. I'll see as it comes.
You also expressed disappointment of a lack of support on reforming the quota system in IMF, right? As India is moving towards $5 trillion economy in 5 years from now, what should be the India's due quota in the IMF from your perspective?
Well, not just me, there are several countries who voiced the disappointment at the way in which 15th round was concluded. So many countries felt there is a need to take that approach, and even today when we said it, there were quite a few heads which nod in favor. So I think that is fairly clear as to what kind of approach with which the quota system has to work. We've all voiced that. On the specifics of how much it should be, I wouldn't get into the details now.
But now, just to follow up, why is it taking so long? India has been doing this for a long time, pursuing this case for a long time.
Not just India, as I said.
I mean, yes, it's a group of countries which have been
Yeah.
doing this, and
Yeah.
things haven't moved. The story is very much like what's happening at the UN. The Security Council expansion is from one stumbling block to another. And is there a sense of urgency that can be introduced? Or
Even as we raised it today and yesterday when we were in the sidelines talking about this, there seems to be a receptiveness to the point, and the appreciation exists that yes, it has to happen. But what really is holding it back, I may not be able to speculate. But I can see there is a appreciation of the point which is being made, and in all probability in the next round it should be through, is my feeling. There isn't a negativity about it, but as to why it didn't happen, I can't be the best person to answer.
would India like to support a non-European managing director at the IMF next time? We've been trying to get this out of the IMF goes to Europe and World Bank goes to US.
Yeah.
We've been trying to break this cycle for a long time. But will there be a candidate that India will feel?
I don't think I'll be in the best of positions to answer that now.
Was there any discussion or feedback on the recent reforms which you have been suggesting? Although it's an internal matter of the Indian economy, but the banks in India, some failed, some problems, and you have followed your press briefings on those in India. So was there any feedback, any discussion on your efforts
On the banks and failures of banks?
in India?
No, you mean on the failures of banks, was there any comment here is what you're asking?
Yeah, was there
No,
anything
there was
come up?
not even remotely anyone related
Okay.
to that.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you about Libra, where a lot of finance ministers releasing things have commented about it, even the IMF, World Bank both have commented. I know India has banned cryptocurrencies, but do you have it view
On our side, the Reserve Bank
on-
governor spoke about it during our turn to intervene. I got the sense that many countries were cautioning on rushing into this. Some of them, of course, even suggested that they shouldn't be using, all of us shouldn't be using the name stable currency, because that's the expression they used. And many cautioned to the extent saying even the name should not be stable currency, it should relate to virtual currency or something of that kind. 3 or 4 different names which were propped up by different people, but the overall sense was that countries will have to show extreme caution much before anything is said or moved on this. So even as people, and in fact this morning some of the presentations were also highlighting the strengths of such a virtual currency, but equally everyone without fail spoke about the challenges together with talking about it as a, if necessary, step forward. So everyone was stepping cautiously on it.